Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Bonney Weekly podcast. Hopefully, we will stick with it being weekly. It should be weekly for the next 12 weeks at least, as we kick off the new season. And I've got to say, thank you very much for all the support we've had in the last video. Over 1,000 views already within 24 hours. So it's looking like it's going to be another stonker. I'm blown away because, like I say, we've only got 1,700 subscribers. So at this point, when I'm recording this, we've got 1,200 views already, so thank you very much. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for people who have commented and messaged me. It really does mean a lot. Today's podcast, we're going to be looking at a few things. The Bonney Weekly, I'm going to have a look at how to defend yourself in prison. We're going to have a look at organ harvesting, illegal organ harvesting. Who would have even thought that would be a thing these days? And also, I love a prison officer who gets caught smuggling in items or having relationships with prisoners. So we'll have a couple of those that I've flagged in my phone for this particular podcast. Lucy Letby hasn't been sentenced yet as we stand, so I'll probably cover that in next week's podcast. And there was something on the news I saw today about a young offenders prison as well, where there was this absolute melt on Channel 4 News talking about how these kids it's 16 to 18 year olds in a HMYOY, they are the most violent age demographic. So if you're looking at sort of the prison estate, you got 16 to 18 year olds, you got 18 to 21 year olds, and then you got 21. Once you're over 21, you're an adult, and you're in adult prison still, till you die. The 16 to 18 year olds are the most violent, and you'll get the most kicking off, the most trouble with these guys. 18 to 21 is when I entered the prison system, and that's pretty violent. And then 21 and over, it just seems to drop off a cliff, and it's just calm. You'll get small bouts of violence every now and then, but it's not every hour, every day like it is in the younger prisons. So we'll have a look at that as well. And I'd love to see your thoughts of anyone who actually saw it on Channel 4 and saw that guy saying that we should be letting these guys out and giving them hugs rather than keeping them banged up. Let's get straight into it. I saw in the papers in the last couple of days, we've got a prison officer. What's her name? Olivia Hodgson. And I've just looked her up as well, and she's not a pig. She's one of the... Well, she's not a supermodel, but this kind of picture shows her without any makeup on, I think, in her prison greys. She's looking a bit miserable. She's got a compo face on. Let's have a look. Olivia Hodgson, 26, had been working at HMP Garth in Lancashire since 2017 and started a relationship with the prisoner Ford Morgan in early 2020. Olivia Hodgson was sentenced to 8 months for misconduct in a public office, so she'll do 4 of that, maybe a bit less if she gets tagged, after she started a relationship with Ford Morgan. The 26-year-old had been working at HMP Garth in Leyland when she smuggled in mobile phones into the prison to communicate with the inmate she was seeing. In January 2021, Ford Morgan was transferred to another prison where he was subject to a cell search following intelligence received to the prison. A mobile phone was recovered and analysis evidenced that he had been in touch with another mobile number later found out to belong to Olivia Hodgson. Probably found the nudes as well, although they may not recognise some of the angles of the pictures that she'd been taking. It happens time and time again, and this guy's not even a nice guy. So Ford Morgan, who is currently serving a sentence for murder and possessing a shotgun and firearm with intent to endanger life, admitted to possessing a prohibited mobile phone and was jailed for a further 18 months. So he's basically got 18 months on top of his, I imagine he's serving a sentence for life, for murder, so he's doing life. I would have thought he's got 18 months on top of his life. Officers seized another mobile phone which contained messages of the pair, as well as a birthday card addressed to Olivia, which had his fingerprints on it. So yeah, it always just makes me laugh when these women, it's often women, throw their lives and their career away for these guys who are either never getting out of prison or definitely should be in prison. He must have had some banter on him that he made her give up her career essentially for a few. Because other than maybe a shag in the cell when no one's looking, What else has he got to offer? Another one which I saved in my phone it's from March, this one, so a little bit earlier on in the year. Another prison guard. She was 27, this one. It was roughly about the same age as the other one. She was 26, wasn't she? Prison guard, 27, who had a relationship with an inmate and brought in cannabis, faces jail. Joanne Hunter, 27. Again, not a pig. She's a fan of a filter, but she's not that mean. Joanne Hunter, 27, started a romance with an unnamed prisoner. I don't know if he was born without a name or if they haven't named him in this one. Started a romance with an unnamed prisoner at HMP Forest Bank in Salford, late 2020. God, that lockdown was rough for people, wasn't it? She has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit misconduct in a public office and bringing or conveying cannabis into the prison. The judge at Manchester Crown Court, Judge Rachel Smith, said immediate custody is inevitable in cases like this. Details a bit about the relationship, which began in December 2020, were not yet revealed at the court hearing. She had denied bringing or conveying the unauthorised mobile phone into the prison, and the offence will be left to lie on file. Oh, so she brought phones in as well, but she didn't get caught with that. She got caught with the weed. So again, another one. What is she doing? You know, it doesn't say what the inmate was facing this time. It's just the prison officer that's been dragged through this. There's got to be men who have have relationships with female inmates, but we just don't see about them in the news. Maybe the female inmates having relationships with men is just more newsworthy, but it just seems to pop up again and again. And it's like I've always thought that I would never try and smuggle drugs out of South America. I would never try and do crime in Thailand or any of those places that I really wouldn't want to go to jail or really wouldn't want to get caught committing a crime. I just wouldn't even entertain the idea of doing it. But yet these prison officers keep throwing away their career for inmates who have got nothing to offer other than a bit of danger and that, like I say, a bit of illicit behaviour in a cell, in a smelly cell. With a smelly inmate. What are they doing with their lives? And why weren't they around when I was in jail? Now, the other thing I mentioned in the news about, I'd seen it a little while ago, about a criminal gang, a Nigerian criminal gang, arrested for potentially harvesting organs from people, basically trafficking people to the UK to then harvest their organs. This sounds like something that, it's just scare stories or, these kind of old wives' tales about people, getting kidnapped and then waking up and their kidneys missing or something like that. And I'd seen something recently where they were talking about the people on boats, and they'd interviewed a bunch of people from this small boat that had come over to the UK. And, there was women there that had been raped and sexually abused on the way across, not on the boat, but, in the journey from Syria or whichever country they'd come from. And one of these guys had literally, been drugged and woke up without, just a stitches in the back of his body there, where someone had stolen one of his organs while he was asleep and passed out. It's crazy. It's crazy that these things, along with modern day slavery, it's crazy that these things are actually happening in the world at the moment. So just having a look, this is again from sort of March time. I just wanted to I saved it in my phone for when I next kind of did these things. So a senior Nigerian politician and his wife, a doctor, have been convicted of an organ trafficking ring in the first verdict of its kind under the Modern Day Slavery Act. I won't try and read out their name. It's about 16 letters long. You probably get a good score in what's that game called? You probably get a good. All I can think of is Subbuteo. Scrabble. That's it, not Subbuteo. Scrabble. Sorry. So this former president, he's 60-year-old, from the Nigerian Senate, and his wife Beatrice, 56, and Dr. Obeta, 51, were found guilty of facilitating the travel of a young man to Britain with a view to his exploitation after a 6-week trial at the Old Bailey. They criminally conspired to bring the 21-year-old Lagos street trader to London to exploit him for his kidney, the jury found. The man, who cannot be named for legal reasons, has been offered an illegal reward to become a donor for the senator's daughter after kidney disease forced her to drop out of the master's degree at Newcastle University. So this rich guy and this rich family were genuinely going to get someone over here to pay them for their kidney, basically. She cried in court as her parents were sent down from the dock. So she needed a kidney, now she needs a new family. In February 2020, the man was falsely presented to a private renal unit at Royal Free Hospital in London as Sonia's cousin in a failed attempt to persuade medics to carry out an £80,000 transplant. For a fee, the medical secretary at the hospital acted as Ingbagu's interpreter between the man and the doctors to try and help convince them that he was an altruistic donor, the court heard. The prosecutor, Hugh Davies KC, told the court that the pair had treated the man and other potential donors as disposable assets and spare parts for reward. He said they entered into an emotionally cold commercial transaction with the man. Wow. There's a couple of them here. They look like your classic sort of African sort of family. I'll put the picture up in a moment. What he agreed to do was not simply expedient in the clinical interests of his daughter, Sonia. It was exploitation. It was criminal. It is no defence to say he acted out of love for his daughter. Her clinical needs cannot come at the expense of the exploitation of somebody in poverty. Well, isn't that any transaction, really? You know, the guys at Amazon really... they're being exploited for their need for money and wages. Isn't that the same as everything? It's not, no, they don't have to lose their kidneys. But isn't it the same for everybody? Aren't we all just sort of being exploited for the wages we need to pay our rent and eat food? I don't know. I think a lot of people probably would. It's like, essentially, it's if they did it on OnlyFans, if they just did it in the right way, they probably could. But I don't know, the laws again holding us back. I don't know. I just thought that was amazing that people were still doing this all the time. Organ exploitation for the rich, and it's happening in this country today. I thought I'd go back and just update you on something I've kind of talked about for a while, because it really did enthrall me. Elizabeth Holmes, she's actually started her sentence now. She got found guilty ages ago, absolutely ages ago. I think it was before Christmas she got found guilty. But there's that weird thing in America, if you're rich enough, you don't have to go to jail straight away. So most of us, as soon as you get sentenced, you go to jail. They just take you downstairs and you start your sentence. But if you're rich enough in America, you can almost negotiate when you start your sentence. So former Thanaros CEO Elizabeth Holmes was taken into custody on Tuesday. This was back in May, actually. Let's have a look. When was this? So this was May 30th. So yeah, back in the end of May, she's gone to prison to start her 11-year sentence in Texas for swindling investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars and lying about her bio company's blood testing technology. Holmes, 39, will be incarcerated in a minimum security women's prison camp in Byron, Texas, located about 95 miles northwest of Houston, where she grew up as an inspiring entrepreneur with a visionary dream of becoming the next sort of Apple co-founder, sort of Steve Jobs. She leaves behind a nearly 2-year-old son who was born weeks before the start of her trial, and a 3-month-old daughter who was conceived after her conviction in November. So that was it. Yeah, she was convicted in November 2022, but she's been fighting, obviously because she's had 2 kids. She's very manipulative. So she's had 2 young kids in the hope that it will either lessen her sentence or she will get out of it altogether. It's, she's a con woman. I love con women. I love con men. She shot her shot, and it didn't come off. I've talked about what she did over and over again, so go back and look into the old videos if you want to find out what she did. But she basically conned people out of hundreds of millions of dollars for a device that didn't work, never worked. And instead of admitting that it was basically in research and development stage, she told everyone that it's ready to go. And not only is it ready to go, but it's being used by the military. And she had a ton of people tricked. She's either really good at conning people, or she's really good at blowjobs. But she got hundreds of millions of dollars out of some of the most savvy investors who you would think would be savvy. But they weren't, and they got conned. So, yeah, she's 11 years, and she'd probably have to do most of that as well, which is pretty wild for someone who was once one of the faces of who's who in amongst billionaires. So something I saw on Channel 4 News just before I made this recording today was a report about Cookham Wood Young Offenders Institution near Rochester in Kent. And it was basically showing how bad it was. Inmates' detailed findings of the inspection published on Tuesday set out how weapon making was widespread in the facility, which holds 77 lads. It was said that 228 weapons were found in the 6 months before the inspection. This was much higher than the number compared to similar establishments, the report said. Security checks were inadequate, and nearly a quarter of the boys said they felt unsafe. Well, I'm guessing if you didn't have a weapon, you'd feel unsafe. The other 200 did. Makeshift weapons. Chief Inspector of Prisons, Charlie Taylor, was so concerned by the appalling conditions he discovered at the Kent prison in April that he demanded urgent improvement from the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. At the time, the watchdog told how boys were found in solitary confinement for days on end, including 2 boys who had been held in such conditions for more than 100 days. The use of solitary confinement was to manage conflict between the inmates, and in the wake of many children fashioning makeshift weapons from kettles and other metal objects to protect themselves, the report said. The inspectors also found the facility in poor overall condition with dirty living units and broken equipment. Now, from my experience, when I was at Portland, it's changed now, but Portland used to be a young offenders institution, and it would hold lads from 16 to 21. So Grenville and Nelson wing would hold the young offenders from 16 to 18, and then the rest of the prison would hold the slightly older lads from 18 to 21. And it was wild there. I've talked before in some of my other videos about how out of control it was and how violence was rife, and not only violence amongst inmates, but violence from staff to inmates as well. And one of the major problems, I don't know if it's still the same, so people would have to let me know in the comments, but 16 to 18-year-olds couldn't receive extra days. So there was no incentive to behave, almost. You knew that you weren't going to get any extra days for it, so what was the point in not fighting? And the Channel 4 news report, I don't know if anyone's seen it, but they had a lad on there who said that basically we don't need prison officers, we need social workers to look after these lads. Keeping them in prison isn't the way forward for these young lads, and they should basically close the prison down and let everybody out. Now, my question would be, what's the alternative? What is the plan? Because these kids, obviously, they didn't just steal a handful of sweets and then ended up in prison. I know these kids have been through the care system. I know that they've had a difficult life, and I know that they would have come from troubled backgrounds. They would have been maybe indoctrinated into gangs, and then they would have possibly seen this route of violence, and then into prison. But is that really society's problem, that then these, in the same way that mental hospitals were shut down, and now we just have all these people with mental health issues just roaming the streets and living homeless and basically being cared for, in air quotes, in the community? Do we just empty these young offenders prisons and not lock up anyone before the age of 18 or 21 and just see antisocial behaviour and crime going through the roof? Because these kids weren't in there, like I say, for dishing out hugs and stealing handfuls of sweets. Some of these people are in for very violent crimes, robberies, drug dealing, violent attacks. They're fighting over postcodes. So these little punk kids feel that, one postcode is more important than another postcode, or one area is more important than another area, one estate is more than important than another estate. And we are essentially warring apes. I'm not saying it's a race thing, but our DNA is that we are still apes, and we are still dumb apes who fight each other over resources. And the resources that these kids have are drugs and territory, and they've got no other direction than to fight each other over these stupid imaginary boundaries and lines. And then this spills into prison, because when you put all these bad people together, suddenly then, you've got to have an East London wing, a West London wing, a South and North wing. And then the minute they try and mix them in any way, then there's bloodshed. And then obviously they're falling out between each other as well. These people, these two lads that have been on solitary for more than 100 days, they weren't in there again because they were the life and soul of the wing. They were in there because they were the worst people on that wing. They were violent to other inmates, and they were, cracking skulls and violent to staff and things. And for this person, it's very naive to say that, we should be letting them all out, because they're in there because society dictates that we lock up bad people. We're just not locking up kids willy-nilly. The Prison Reform Trust has described the report as shocking, and said that it revealed a failure of leadership at the highest levels of the youth justice system. I mean, again, unless you can think of something else to do with them, what else are we doing? Putting people in prison is a last resort. These kids have been through care, they've been through social work, they've been through everything else. They may not have had loving families, and then that's just the roll of the dice. Lots of people are very lucky to have a loving mum and dad, and then others of us, just were mistakes essentially. So it's very difficult. I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments about what you feel we should do with these kids, if not locking them up. Because again, we are just, a lot of the people I met in adult prisons had already been in. They're 25 and they've already been in for 10 years through systems and through, child care homes and, youth care homes and that sort of thing. So it's very interesting to see what you would think. Now that leads me beautifully on to my last subject of today's podcast, and that is how to protect yourself in prison. So we've talked a lot about how when I was first in prison, was vulnerable. I sold drugs in small amounts to my little surfer mates. I probably had maybe 10 or 20 customers who bought a little bit of weed off me. It's not an easy way to make a living, and those customers aren't really addicted. Not like if you're selling cocaine or heroin or crack, something like that. There's no real drive for someone who smokes hash to go and empty his bank account out for you at 3 a.m. and come and bring you all his wages and everything. It's just not that kind of drug. So I didn't really want to work when I was a kid, so I ended up just selling drugs. Didn't really make enough money from it, so I ended up doing a stupid robbery, which then got me 4 years in prison. I was then thrown into a HMYY Portland, which was a very violent prison down in Weymouth, where they're actually talking about putting that ship now with all the immigrants on it. There was a prison ship there before, that was bad enough, and now they're putting the immigrant ship there. But yeah, Portland was a real eye-opener for me, because I got to, it's right in the middle of London and the southwest. It's kind of bang in the middle of the two areas. So you get a lot of prisoners from the southwest of England, sort of Devon, Cornwall, Bristol, that sort of thing. But then you get a lot of prisoners as well from London and the surrounding areas. So it's a real culture shock for me. It was the first time I'd been discriminated against for being white. Quite often it was a 50-50 kind of wing balance, of people not from this country and from, black people from the UK and also white people from the UK and Asians and Kosovans and Iraqis, and it was all sorts. It was a real mixed bag, and it was a real culture shock for me, and I came across as being weak. So I had to protect myself quite quickly from the violent elements in this environment. The first thing I can recommend, obviously, to try and protect yourself, other than making a weapon, is to learn how to fight. And this sounds quite simple, but if anybody's watched the In-Betweeners movie, number 2, and he tries to throw a punch, and it's basically, his soft little hand just bounces off his uncle's chin, and that can be the risk of, what you're doing. If you get into a fight with somebody who knows how to fight, you can be quickly out of your depth. So I would just learn how to fight, learn how to throw a punch, practice throwing punches in your cell. Shadow box in your cell. Do plenty of press-ups and sit-ups and burpees. Get that hip rotation that you need to throw a powerful punch. Like I say, learn how to throw a punch would be my biggest tip. So that if you do need to react violently and you don't have a weapon, your hands can become weapons. My second tip is, whenever you do have to defend yourself in prison. Act quickly, act violently, and be completely over the top. So you may not be the best banterer. So a lot of the time you're going to be tested verbally first. And if you can't hold your own verbally, then you're going to be tested physically. A lot of the time, if you can cut someone down with words, rip into them, take the piss, humiliate them first, then a lot of the time they may back down. But a lot of weaker bullies are going to try and test you verbally. And if they can do everything verbally without any kind of physical activity at all, they will exploit you. So my second tip is to, as soon as anything starts going south for you, just be outrageous and violent, aggressive, hit first. You don't have to hit dirty, you don't have to be kicking people in the nuts and anything, but just make sure you don't even react without warning. Just go and attack them like a crazy monkey, like one of those crazy apes you see in the zoo, and just get in there quickly and violently. If you do feel the need to make a weapon, a toothbrush is a great one. It's one I used to have ready and waiting quite a lot. You'll get issued a prison-issue toothbrush. They're pretty weak and flimsy. But what you can do is you can break the head off it. So all you're left with is kind of a handle and a dull point. And then what you do is you either get a lighter. I don't know if there are lighters in prisons anymore. But you can basically just try and find a rough bit of wall. I used to just get out the window, and there's normally some brickwork outside the window, and you just sit there and rub this end of the toothbrush until you can fashion it into a kind of pointy end of a plastic handle. And then what you do is you just put that toothbrush into the cup where you hold your normal toothbrush, obviously pointy end down, so it looks like it's just a toothbrush in a cup. And the sink is normally roughly around in the middle of the cell. So if it ever kicks off, all you got to do is jump up, grab your toothbrush, and start jabbing it towards their neck. And that should normally help you out. Now, another little weapon you can make, this sort of classic prison blade, where inmates will take the blades out of a razor. You just break open a razor, get the actual blade bit out, then you heat up the end of a toothbrush and insert two blades just a couple of millimeters apart. Now, the reason you enter in two blades rather than one is because it cuts a tram line then of incisions into the skin, and it makes it very difficult to sew up. So what you want is a big dirty scar across someone's face. If you do, like I'm saying, I'm not advocating this in any way, shape or form, but if you do feel like you need to make a weapon, the old tramline razor blades in the toothbrush is a fantastic one. It's naughty looking, and also it inflicts a lot of damage when scarred across their face. Inmates will try and cut other inmates' face as a kind of sign. If you're going to hurt someone, you don't want no one to ever know about it. But yeah, a lot of inmates will threaten that, I'm going to cut your face, and it's real. And again, if someone ever threatens to cut your face, go and smash their head off their shoulders before they even get chance to go and get their blade. It's much better you being down the block or being one of those boys in 100 days of solitary or flying off to another prison than have your face sliced open after he's told you he's going to do it. Next, we would look at, other weapons that you can fashion out of things you've got in your cell. So you'll normally have a toilet brush. Again, you can take the head off the toilet brush, fashion the handle into a long point. Again, shaving down the end, grinding it against the wall. All of these methods can be done to make your toilet brush into a sharp point. Again, that's dirty and horrible and can be quickly made into a weapon. Ripping the table leg off. You'll be given a wooden table in your cell. Quite often you can knock the table leg off, and then you've got almost like a baseball bat that you can go out swinging with. There's bits of metal, any bit of metal that you can get your hands on. So it might be from the edge of the bed. It might be from something in a workshop that you've been working on. What you do then is you get a sheet, tear off the edge of it so you can make some sort of handle, because you don't want to be hurting your hand while you're doing this. And then get yourself, obviously, you then got a more and more sharp weapon that you can use. Again, it's not advisable, because if you get caught with it, as those 200 weapons that they found in that prison, you're going to get extra days. But if you're in a position where you feel like you need to defend yourself, then sometimes having at least just that little bit of confidence that if anyone comes barging into your cell, if 3 or 4 of them come barging into your cell, then you can definitely defend yourself. Some of the dirtier weapons, you can use your own feces and pee. They call it swilling. So basically, you get feces and pee in some sort of bottle, so you can put it into a shower gel bottle, however you want to get it into there. And then at the point of someone rushing into your cell, or if you want to go and attack someone, getting this squeezy Radox bottle full of dirty liquid, a little dirty bomb, you can then take that and squirt it at people. It's not gonna hurt anyone, but it's awful. It's awful to have that done to you. So that would be more one when you see the nonces like passing through the wing. That'd be more for one of them. Or if you've got someone you really don't like, maybe squirting it under their door or in their face when they open the door. Or the staff sometimes. Again, I'm not advocating this, but if there's that member of staff who's giving you a few digs, you want to get him back or her back, and that's the way forward. But it's not nice. But sometimes you've got to do what you got to do. And the last one, the classic, I'm going to sort of cover today, would be the sugar. Sugar in water, boiling water. Put some sugar in it just to make it extra nasty, so it turns into almost like a treacle, nice and hot, and then go and throw it over someone. It sticks like tar. I've seen many people getting swilled with hot water. The skin peels off their face. It's horrible, but it is a way of striking first, striking very aggressively, and give them something to think about while they're burning. Essentially, and a couple of others I forgot actually. I've done this before as well. I thought people were coming for me, so I've put batteries in a sock. Get those big chunky radio batteries, put them in a sock, 2 or 3 of them, and swing it round. It's medieval. You want to make sure you hit the person with it. But again, if you're going to do that, why not fight? It's a nasty weapon. You've got a few chances at swinging it. But I've seen pool balls being put in a sock before. One of the inmates has cracked someone else over the head with them, and the guy's just turned around and battered him. So it's one of those kind of weapons where you want to make sure it definitely works. And if it doesn't work, then what you got to do? You got to fight. So why not just fight to start with? Use your hands and fists and feet and teeth and whatever else you want to hit him with. But obviously, don't fight. Be good. Stay out of trouble. Look after yourself and each other. Don't ever go to prison. But if you do, look after yourself. All right. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure, as always. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Get everyone listening. Share it. Keep it to yourself. Do what you need to. All right. Thank you very much for listening. See you in a couple of days. Cheers now. Bye-bye.